Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Seat Academy webinar. We would like to welcome Deon Louw from the Department of Education, who is going to be explaining to us how we go about in registering as homeschool students. We also have Nakita Bowers on top there. She's the accounts manager at Seat Academy, who would be taking us through the pricing structures, the fees for each individual grade with Seat Academy. We will be joined by Rebecca, hopefully a bit later. She's just has some issues with the sound. So if I'd like to start off with Mr. Deon Louw from the Western Cape Department of Education, if you could just take us through the registration process for homeschool students, please.
Good morning, everybody, and so nice to be with you on this chat. Thank you, Melisa, for the opportunity. Like Melissa said, I'm from the Education Department responsible for home education within the Western Cape. Let me take you through the processes. What is home education? When do I qualify to do home education and why? And the reasons therefore. So in terms of our South African Schools Act, which is the guiding legislative tool for education in South Africa, in the Act, it's quite clear that all children between the ages of 7 and 15 years old are of compulsory school going age, which implies they must attend a public school or registered independent school. However, if the parents of learners in that cohort desires to take the children out and teach them at home, which means home education, they must apply for approval to do that. That's when the application is processed, and it is then an application form that was developed. It's available on the website, our website, the Western Cape Education Department website, as well as the National Department of Education's website. The parents then complete the application form, which they submit with the relevant documentation as indicated on the application form to our offices. We will then process. The approval process is given per phase, which is your foundation phase, grades 1 to 3. So the parents apply for foundation phase, and in the third year of their homeschooling, which is in grade 3, by September of that year, they must submit an application if they desire to continue for the next phase, which is the intermediate phase, which is grades 4 to 6. And then in grade 6, they apply for the senior phase, which is grade 7 to 9. We will then process per phase. We give approval per phase. We get a registration certificate and a letter from the department informing you of your approval for home education. Then there is certain requirements that the parents must comply with when they apply. They must see to the teaching and learning. They must get the materials, which you're not forced to do CAPS per se. CAPS is the curriculum followed in the public schools. You're not forced to do that. However, there's a requirement that whatever parents allow their children to learn must not be inferior to CAPS, and the outcomes must be similar or above the minimum outcomes of CAPS. That's a requirement, and I know SEED SA will ensure that the learners, whatever they do, are in line with that requirement. That is basically summing up, and then the next phase will be the the phase we approve is the general education phase, GET phase, grades 1 to 9 or 8, 7 to 15. The FET phase, further education and training, is grades 10 to 12. For that, you don't need approval because the child is no more of compulsory school going age. However, if you are doing the home education for grades 10, 11, and 12, and you want to write CAPS in matric, there is certain requirements that must be complied with, which is your school-based assessments that must be done for grade 10, 11, and 12, and so recorded so that you can be registered as a private candidate to write the matric exams. That, in a nutshell, is our processes that we follow. And just with the procedures, the application comes to us. It either comes to my office or the district office. The district then has the responsibility to evaluate the material received, the application, the documents, is everything okay? In terms of the policy, there is a home visit that takes place where a district official visits the parents at home, have an interview with them. It's a courtesy visit. And one of the reasons for that is, remember, the application is submitted to the responsible official that must approve it, which is normally the head of education, but he has delegated that responsibility. So that official must either give approval or not approve based on the information received, which is the application and the home visit. So the official will visit the parents and the child, have an interview with them, and ascertain how they will go about it, and also to look at the area that they will work. Is it conducive for teaching and learning? Is there enough space? And then put the recommendation. Then it comes to my office. We then process the application and submit it for approval. Currently, over the last 2 years, we are not doing the home visits in most cases due to COVID and the visitations at homes, the space. So for now, we're giving provisional approval based on the material submitted, and then if in the new year circumstances allow it, a home visit will take place. The courtesy visit is to visit parents, to chat with them and see how things are going. And then after that visit, we give a full certificate of approval. That, in a nutshell, Melissa and those listening, is the processes that we follow currently. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that information, Deon. Rebecca, I just want to check, are you online?
I am here. I'm hoping you can hear me.
Yes, we
Great.
can.
Great.
Welcome to the panel today.
Thank you so
Rebecca,
much.
you're welcome. Rebecca, I'm not too sure, as part of the homeschool community, obviously there are certain parents that have certain information or questions pertaining to registration and things like that. I hope Mr. Deon Louw doesn't mind, but is there any specific questions that you might have for Mr. Louw, perhaps, that you might have picked up from parents?
Mr. Louw and I have actually discussed it already, but we'll do it again for this live. Essentially, the biggest concern parents have, and it's been an ongoing thing, is when they do register for homeschooling, they don't often get replies from the department. And we are aware that there is obviously a very severe backlog since COVID. But even before COVID, this was an issue. We are presuming it's a combination of the department being understaffed and a logistical issue. So I think what our main concern would be is if the parents have registered for that particular phase and they don't hear from the department, what do they do? We've been advising them just to carry on as normal, do their due diligence, send in the assessments as they have them, and just hope to hear from them eventually and just carry on, because without the reciprocal communication from the department, the parents are just worried that at some point what they're doing with their children might be disqualified in retrospect. And I think that's the biggest worry. We don't know where we stand there and what we will do in the future if we find what we've done is not good enough or adequate, or our assessments weren't done by the right people, that sort of thing. I think that's our main concern for registration. Can't hear you.
I'm so sorry, I muted myself there. But Mr. Deon, if you'd like, Mr. Louw, if you'd like to go ahead, you can answer that.
Thanks very much. Yes, it is a challenge. We have had received hundreds and hundreds of applications. For parents over the last year and a bit, we have informed them when they get their application into us. I respond with an email to every parent that applies. And in that email, we give them a short discussion note informing them of the processes and the fact that we will not be able to do home visits and that they must continue with home education. Don't wait on us. They must continue until such time that we can do the visit. And it doesn't mean that when we come that we're going to stop you. You must just ensure that you do the best you can for your children. And when we visit, we'll help where there's assistance needed. If we find that the child is battling, how best can the department assist? And like Rebecca said, we are understaffed. It's a huge challenge. My office must process all the applications. And about 2 months ago, we finished with 2020's applications. And now we're addressing 2021's applications, which is quite a lot. So yeah, we are battling, but we're trying our utmost to get to parents. And I know my emails is full of parents inquiring, when will I get an answer? When will I get an answer? Please bear with us, parents. It is coming. We are doing our utmost to process as fast as we can. At point in time, I must say it's a manual process of going through every application, doing the forms. Now
Wow.
we've streamlined it a bit because we've done it via the technology. We just punch in the details and the forms is generated at the background. So it makes it a bit easier. So it's getting to go much quicker now. If parents do have any concern, feel free to email me or call me, and I'll try my utmost to see how best we can speed up whatever we can do. But it is a challenge,
Okay.
not only
Thank
in
you for
our province, in all the provinces.
that's so
Thank you.
true. Yes, Rebecca.
I have another question. One of the issues we have with homeschoolers is that they don't understand that the FET phase is technically no longer homeschooling. And because it's no longer homeschooling, we don't actually need to register our children for homeschooling. So there are many parents who get to the grade 8, grade 9 phase, and then they feel a little bit lost about what to do for the FET phase as homeschoolers. It would be really great if perhaps some of the online schools and the department could get together and put together a document of some sorts where there would be a list that when the homeschoolers do email for registration purposes, which obviously they can't register at grade 10, if the department could maybe send them something to say, this is no longer homeschooling, and for the FET phase, this is what the Department of Education expects of you as the parent, and here is a list of a certified examination groups, or something where they can just go through the list and contact all the various people to see what they can do as a next step for their child. We just seem to have a little bit of a, um, a hurdle there where this sort of the process just ends and there isn't some sort of assistance for the continuation of studies.
Yes, Mr. Louw, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Rebecca. I fully understand that. It is a challenge, especially if the learners are doing CAPS. So what we
Okay.
advise parents, when I get an inquiry for home education for grades 10, 11 or 12, then I inform them you don't need approval. You are no more of compulsory schooling age. However, if you are doing CAPS, the assessments is critical. The grade 10 and
Okay.
11 and 12 school-based assessments, that's the core. Because without that, you cannot write the CAPS matric exams. So what we advise them, and it's something that we are looking at for the new year, is to sensitize our schools, our secondary schools, because we advise parents to go into a MOA, Memorandum of Understanding, with a school that will assist with this, the SBAs, that it's recorded and logged in so that they are then registered as independent candidates. Now,
Okay.
you have your authorities like CSA and other organizations that are registered with Sakai as assessment bodies. You can then do the assessments and it's acceptable, and the learner is then registered for the exams. But I know we have a bit of work to do in that. You see, it's not my portfolio stops at grade 9, but I realize the need for this information sharing with those parents. So we'll definitely look at some form of documentation and guide document to parents to help them, and also, as Rebecca indicated, to get the list of assessment bodies that's registered that can assist those parents. They must also know there's a fee attached to that parents must carry for that assessment. Yes, so we really need that support going forward for next year. We'll really attend to that. Thanks, Rebecca.
Thank you for that. I've got a question that I'd like to ask Mr. Louw. We understand that obviously there's no provision made for service providers when it comes to homeschooling. For instance, Seat Academy, as an academy itself, does not have to register with the Department of Education, stating that we are offering a homeschool service to parents that's homeschooling their parents, the kids, and things like that. All right. Are we looking at maybe implementing something like that in the future? Alternatively, I mean, I do understand that some parents prefer doing different types of schooling, combining it together to obviously give their child the best that they think is possible. Is there a way of bridging that gap between a service provider like Seat Academy and a homeschool parent that is teaching their child?
At this point, like you said, service providers are not required to register anyway. It's a
Yeah.
private company and they offer their services. So there is currently in legislation no requirement to register. What we can do is create a database of all these service providers which we have ready that can be provided to parents. So if they inquire who can they use, then they have the option, right? So I cannot promote anyone. I can give a list of names
Understandable. Yes.
and it's the parent's choice. They must
Yes.
then contact those individual assessment bodies or service providers for help. Um, and they cannot also expect of Mr. Louw to say, which one do you think is the best?
Yes, please don't associate Mr. Louw with Seat Academy.
That's not true.
He's purely just here providing information.
So at national level, and I saw an email in the week, they are put on a database of service providers, like all the other online schools that's now popping up can give their
Mhm.
names to the department. They create a database where all this information is stored on, and that's where it stops for now.
Okay.
And it's the parents' choice of who they want to use. And like you indicated, Melissa, they can make a selection of some of it. GSA,
Yes.
whatever they want to use, it's their choice. They must just
Yes.
ensure that the child completes the specific grades successfully. That's our
Understandable.
thank you.
Yes. No, thank you for that. I just want to ask Nakita, she's been sitting there very quietly, waiting patiently. I just want Nakita just to take us through Seat Academy pricing structure for 2022, please.
Thank you, Melissa. So, the prices for next year from grades R to 9 will be 650 Rand per month. So, if you would like to register, the registration is also 650 Rand a month, and then the fees will be 650 Rand for 12 months. So, for our grade 10s and 11s, it will be 750 Rand registration as well as for the month. Our grade 12s are 1,400 Rand registration as well as 1,400 Rand per month. We do have a discount for those parents who are able to pay the fees in advance. So we are able to give them a 10% discount off of the fees for the whole year.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Nakita. Really appreciate it. And just to advise, when it comes to the FET phase, grade 10 to 12, there is additional cost involved for the Sakai assessment, as we mentioned earlier. So all those costs is included into our monthly pricing structure that Nakita provided right now. The only difference is the grade 12s. Obviously, for the grade 12s, there is a February and March upfront payment, and that is just to cover the exams, the booking fees for the venue where they will write their final exams at the end of the year, and that needs to be done in March already. So that's the only reason why we asked the upfront payment for those two for the first 3 months. Otherwise, it's every month. It will be paid monthly. Just as a side note there. Um, is there any other questions, Rebecca? I
Yes.
saw your hand. I'm not too sure if I saw your hand or not.
Yes. I was just curious to ask about practical subjects for the grade 10 and 11 and 12. Now, I realize with online learning that is quite a challenge to do the practical aspect of some of the science subjects. Because I don't do online learning like this with my kids. I do have a lot of questions, so I'm not exactly a fay with how you guys do it. If the children are doing a practical subject, how does SEAT SA handle that, and what do you do for the fees? Because with practicals, obviously there's quite an extra cost in that. Is that catered for? How do you get around that?
So we don't have a lot of practical subjects. Okay. If I think about life orientation and I think about consumer studies, those two are basically the only two that you would think that need some sort of activity to be done.
Okay.
The rest, like geography, history, accounting, those type of things, is well managed online. And the way the exams normally, or even English, may take English for an example. English, you've got oral, okay, so
Okay.
or reading and that type of thing. So obviously, the last thing you want is to have somebody standing, you're online, so now you're having a reading or you're doing your oral, and you have 30 odd people that's watching you doing this thing. So we take that away and we basically say, make a video. If you've got projects or assignments that you need to do, make a video of it. Explain the video while you're moving your camera around. Explain what happened, how you did it, so that there's a whole story behind it. But you also have a written, a practical behind it, where there is the explanation from point A to point Z, step by step, what happened during the process and how you actually ended up getting to the final result. And if you submit those two online, then obviously that is how the students are assessed based on practical assessments or assignments that they need to do. So we have taken those into consideration, and but I think you're more focusing on like the art, the drama, the music. Those we don't offer, because obviously with that, even though it can be done online, it is very difficult to actually do an assessment, having the child being at home and not actually physically being able to see, especially with art, and or even with music.
Totally.
So we don't offer those particular. So we try to stay away from that. Even the computer application technology that they've got, even though we are technically using it, I mean, kids are on their laptops every day. They're busy working. We feel that it's not needed for them to do that subject, because then it's an additional cost. You've got to go book a room that caters for that type of exam, and that pushes the exam cost up. So we like to keep all our fees standard, so that across the board there is not a case of one parent is paying this and the other parent is paying that, or I
Okay.
can't afford to pay this, but I want my child to do it, but I can't afford it. So to alleviate that argument with parents, we prefer not to include it into our curriculum. Does not mean that it might not change in the future, but for now our aim is just to be there for our students, be there for our parents, give them some alternative to what they're currently facing at schools. Not that the schools are doing anything that they're not supposed to, but we do understand with COVID, they are limited to classes and they are limited in how many kids should be in a class. So we understand that there is a problem that is not caused by the Department of Education or even the school itself. But we need to obviously be there to assist parents going forward. And that is what we are trying to do.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yes, Mr. Louw.
I saw a question someone posed. The question was, what happens if after applying and going on, and later on a visit comes and it's not approved? What then?
Yes.
Okay. The chances of it not being approved is in the hands of the parents. If you are happy and you are going to teach your child and you're confident, I don't see any reason why we will not approve. Right? So,
Okay.
and in that visit, we will support as much as we can. Our district official that will come will evaluate, and remember, at the end of the day, when such a decision is made, it will be made with consultation with parents and reasons and why. So be comforted to know we will not just come in and close it down and say, no, you can't. We will look at the circumstances, we look at the requirements, what was expected when you signed up to do it, have you do it, how can we help? And the last resort would be to help the parent to get the child back into a mainstream school. It's a public school or registered independent school. But that's the
Okay.
comfort I can give. It's not a matter
Okay.
of coming and closing down. No, 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 not at all. It's
I,
consultation, support, it's guidance that as far as we can.
yes. Thank you so much. Yes, Rebecca.
I would just like to
Yes,
confirm
Rebecca.
what was just said, that in our experience as homeschoolers for a very long time, the Department of Education has actually not ever, from in my knowledge, done anything to shut down people from homeschooling. Homeschooling is a right. You're allowed to do it. The registration process seems to be a formality that they want in place so that they just know where all the kids are and that they're safe. And in my experience with dealing with homeschoolers, there have been a few cases where, they haven't been allowed to homeschool, but it's not been at the behest of the Department of Education. I think many parents don't understand that the hurdles to actually having your child at home and educating them where they would be disallowed from doing so is normally to do with social services or the welfare groups, where they find that there is a situation at home where the child shouldn't actually be there all the time to receive an education because they simply can't. They're not able to. And this is not actually something that the Department of Education ever does. The Department of Education goes to check, it's just the academic education stuff. The tangent matters are normally to do with issues that are not academic and not about education. And we really need to, as a community involved in education, parents, educators, and the department, keep honing in on that fact that when there's an issue at home, I'll just use an example that I am aware of more recently, where the parents were unfortunately both involved in taking drugs. And there were social workers involved. And obviously, you can't leave children with, it's not actually an education thing, it's to do with safety of kids. You can't leave children in a home where both parents are taking drugs. That family needs help. And the help comes in different forms. And one of the steps to help the children is to actually put them in school, to give them an environment and separate them from the potential harm that they are receiving already at home. So that is not a homeschooling thing. That is a social thing. It is separate from homeschooling. It's separate from education. But over the years, these issues have become so intertwined because the department has been given an unofficial responsibility to check on the safety of children. I find it quite unfair. I don't think the department should be burdened like this, but it is what it is. And the officials that are dealing with it are really doing the best they can. We have seen a lot of people being helped very nicely by the department as far as possible, even in situations where it's not the department's domain to help them. They do help them. It is a very huge issue, and I think a lot of parents worry because they hear about cases that this has happened. But meantime, they're doing just fine. They've got their home, their homeschooling is set up. The department's not going to walk in there and shut them down because there isn't an issue. So I think we must just keep reminding ourselves that there are these congruent factors that are running together, and they're not really connected, but we are in that situation in South Africa.
Yes, thank you so much for that, Rebecca. Mr. Louw, if I could just ask you, the question that popped up from Lou Hemsley is, where do they find the registration forms? I know from Seat Academy's point of view, we do provide the forms, but for somebody that does not deal with Seat Academy, where would they go to find the forms?
There's three options. They can go onto the Department of Basic Education website. Right? There is the portal, then they type in home education, it'll take you to the form. They can go onto the Western Cape Education Department website. There's a portal for home education where they can get it, or they can email me. I'll put my email address on there. It's deon.low@westerncape.gov.za.
Mr. Lowe, I must advise you, with you giving permission to put your email address on here, you are going to get comments from Eastern Cape, Gauteng, all of them. Would that be fine?
Ask Rebecca,
Yeah.
I can answer as far as I can. That's
Awesome. Awesome stuff. I will definitely do that. And then there's just the last question. I know she said it's supposed to be a report card. She said, can you use a student number that is on the previous? She made a typo there. It's actually the previous transfer cards. I'm not too sure what she means by that. I'm not sure if that is maybe referring to the number that you would give her for homeschool registration.
Okay, we give them a certificate with a number on. So if they apply for the next phase, they must complete a complete new application form. If you apply for the next phase, complete new application form, which will attend. But the information will be on record. We have a database of where they are And hopefully within the new year, our system will. The challenge is parents apply, and we advise them for the next phase you need to apply. That's in their letter. 3 years
Yes.
later, there's no application coming through. So we are hopefully our system will by next year be up and running where we get a notification to say parent Louw, parent whoever must now apply for the next phase. So we can make contact and ask, are you still proceeding with home education into the next phase? Please ensure your application comes to us by, normally it must be by us by September of the
Yes.
previous year. So yeah, that is, but
Yeah.
it's fine.
We
This is the new application form.
Yeah, we also try to advise even our current parents that are homeschooling at the moment. We've reminded them in September, please, you need to, if your child is, because we know which grades they are in or which grades they are going to. So we advise them in September already, start your registration for next year, start your registration for next year. But in a case like what is the duration? I understand the home visit is not happening right now, which is understandable. But what is the duration from them
I somehow you
Melissa's just frozen. I think there's a bandwidth issue.
I saw.
We can just wait for her to come back. I
uh,
wanted to say something. I don't know if you guys can hear me about the
you
registration number, Mr. Lowe. If the parents have got on their transfer card that number that's from the school, do they use that number for something else, or is it now null and void once they've homeschooled?
okay. That's the EMIS number, the learner registration number in the
Yes.
school. Now that number at this point is not applicable. It's only applicable
Okay.
when you're in school. The moment you leave school, that number doesn't reflect anymore. You get a new
Ah,
number on our
okay.
certificate. It's normally a number with your initials. That's a number for our purposes. However, in the new year, we're looking at creating a system where that number can be carried through
Okay.
on this, that you are still on the system and it indicates a home educator. However, people must bear in mind it's technical issues, and to do that, you need to write it into the systems. It's time consuming, it's costly, but it's something we're looking into for the new year, that you don't lose your EMIS number. So what happens if the child is in school up to grade 2? The parent takes the child out and the child goes into home education for 2 years and the child comes back. So the intention is to keep that number right through. But currently,
Um,
if you leave the education system, that number is deleted of the system. And you go into home education, into our database. However, it's something we're looking at, that there can be continuity. When you re-enter into the system, it will pick the child up immediately. Melissa, somehow you were speaking and then it cut out. You just have to redo your.
I know I got cut out, and unfortunately, I will be honest with you, I totally forgot what I was talking about because I was stressing you. So I have no idea what I mentioned. I'm sorry
I
about
think
that.
I think we were talking about where to get the application forms and things from the department for homeschooling.
Yeah, no, we covered that part,
Oh,
and
okay.
and I mentioned the fact that I'm putting his email address on there, and everybody who's going to be responding to that.
Ah, yes.
Yeah. So then the other one that I see is, what if we've been homeschooling, but then after a while the application, oh yes, that's what I asked, the period. How long between sending the application is it, does it become a case of I'm homeschooling my child now, irrespective whether the department gets back to me or not?
Normally, if you even under normal circumstances, you apply for, take this year example, by September this year, you have to submit an application to start home education 2022,
Yes.
right? And normally we would have before 2022 complete the application and give approval. And the question that the parent asks, what if it's not approved and you've already registered by seat SA? Um, I don't think it will be a huge challenge. Um, Under normal circumstances, we'll have attended to the application within that given time, and the parent will be comforted. Like I said, very seldom that we not approve, but there is here and there cases that we will and look at circumstances conducive for home education. But parents can be assured, for now, under this current pandemic, parents must just continue. And I know there's commitment and cost involved by CSA or whoever they use, or if they do it themselves, whatever they do. But we will support as far as possible.
Thank you
And
so much.
Ms. Hemsley asked, do we register for each phase? Not annually. That's correct, Ms. Hemsley. Only per phase. So every 3 years you apply. However, it can differ from case to case, where the parents in the middle of a phase decide to do home education. That's fine. If a parent's circumstances changes during the year, they can apply immediately. They don't have to wait for September. If you must suddenly move or circumstances in your family warrants that you can't send your child to school, you can apply for home education immediately and be treated as an application for that instance. So parents, don't be worried about that. There will be cases where you will have to apply due to your family circumstances have changed, then you can apply for home education. We will attend to every application.
Thank you so much for that. I really appreciate all the information we received today. I'm sure that our watchers and our future parents that will be watching this will find this very informative. Mr. Louw, the information you've provided today was so helpful, and I'm sure that it will help a lot of the parents. Rebecca, thank you so much once again for being part of the panel, just assisting, getting the questions out there that is needed, as well as Nakita for giving us that breakdown on the school fees. I'd like to thank all the watchers of Seat Academy and everybody out there. Have a good Saturday, everybody. We'll see you next week. Okay.
Thanks very much,
Bye.
Melissa. All the best, people. Take care.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye-bye.
Bye.